Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rhetorical Rumble, the podcast where we argue about random things. This is podcast number 3. This is for the 2024 California primary elections, specifically the San Diego primary elections. And today, we're just going to be giving our primary picks. Should be maybe not as exciting, but very important. And talking about primaries in general at the very end. So how this is going to work is everyone's going to give their primary pick for a certain position, and then they're going to give their reasoning to picking the person. And anybody can argue with anybody, but they're going to try to meet them where they're at. So let's say I support this guy because he wants to give everyone free candy every day. Someone would say, oh, well, I heard in the past that guy didn't actually give free candy to everyone every day. Or, that's not a possible thing for him to do, or some way that you're arguing within their logic to try to meet them where they're at and explain why that's not a good reason to support them. Not, oh, well, giving candy away for free every day isn't a good policy. So it's going to be really easy. We're going to jump right into it, and we're jumping right into. We're going to start with the Senate. So I read the Senate thing wrong, and the Senate election thing wrong, and I thought we were picking 2 people. So I narrowed it down to my 1. I'll go first. I thought Barbara Lee was the best candidate. I think her and Schiff have really, really similar domestic policies, but I really respect that Barbara Lee voted no on 9/11, and I feel like she has a more wavering support for Israel at this time. And I think that Schiff saying that he has unequivocal support for Israel is kind of a red flag. I don't think you should ever have unequivocal support for a foreign entity. I think it should obviously always be conditional. But yeah, anyone else is ready to jump in whenever they.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm basically just going to echo exactly what you said because Barbara Lee was my top pick. I really respect that she doesn't like to be engaged with conflicts unless there is a clear resolution plan in place, which has prevented her from, voting for, the invasion of Iraq. She's been calling for a ceasefire. So I think she's very level-headed when it comes to foreign policy, and I mean, I didn't see any red flags with her domestic policy.
Yeah.
And
I
Adam
hear.
Schiff on Israel. Sorry, real quick. Adam Schiff on Israel with the unwavering support was a concern, especially now your support should waver with all of the info coming out.
I guess I'll jump in. I'm honestly surprised that you guys picked Barbara Lee. I thought you guys were going to go with Katie Porter. That was my thought coming into this, because Katie Porter is the most progressive one running. But I think Barbara Lee's awesome, and I hope she gets second place. But my first place pick is Adam Schiff. He has just an outstanding record in Congress, getting tons of money and resources invested in housing to build more housing, and that's where he shined in their debate. All the debaters were just spewing kind of talking points about housing, no specific policies, but Adam Schiff was dead center on talking about the supply problem with housing and the exact numbers that were going to be needed to build enough housing to help with the housing crisis in California. And he's just on top of that issue and is I think he's going to be the best one in Congress to push for good legislation regarding that. He also was a lead in the impeachment inquiry for Donald Trump, serving as one of the key prosecutors in that case, which he was excellent on. And he has been, kind of a leading figure in the Democratic Party's, in the Democratic Party pushing for more climate change bills and laws. He has really pushed, especially for high-speed rail and expanding our transportation system, which is really suffering. And uh, and he has also been a leader in pushing for and establishing more funds for rate kit testing, which has historically often had backlogs. I think overall he's the most experienced, has supported and passed the best policies, and will be able to make the biggest difference in the Senate.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to argue with this domestic policy record. It was very good, but it's not like Barbara Lee wasn't on a lot of those, or not on a lot of those committees, but like voting for a lot of the same things, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think that like the thing that drew me to Barbara Lee specifically, even beyond this conflict, like specifically that's going on, is that she's not. I think that we're in an era where a lot of basically the only two opinions of America's foreign policy right now is America good or America bad, and she seems to have a more like articulate foreign policy where, okay, maybe we should get involved in this situation, but we need to have a plan and we need to have an out. If you understand what I mean by that. I think that was at least my reasoning for voting for Barbara Lee, especially with all of the things going on, because there's not just one conflict, there's another conflict, and there's like this prediction that there might be a Taiwan conflict, which I hope there's not, obviously, but that would not be good, right? And we need someone who has some sort of articulate grasp of those type of things.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's why she's my second above Katie Porter. I think she's much better on those kind of issues than Katie Porter. But with Schiff, I don't really see Schiff not meeting those standards. I mean, I don't know where the unequivocal support came from. Maybe there's a quote in the debate that they had a few days ago. That was not what he was pushing. He was very adamant that there needed to be changes in how Israel handled that conflict. He wasn't as far to the side as Barbara Lee was, where in some of her statements during the debate, but the vibe wasn't unequivocal support that I was getting from his debate performance whatsoever.
Okay, I mean, I looked him up about a week ago, and it was I found that quote on multiple sites. So I mean, maybe he changed his tune in a week, but I
don't think so. Last I heard, he said like he will support Israel no matter what. Like, I think the quote was past, present, and future. And if you're going to support someone no matter what they do in their future, it's just a very concerning look.
I think that was a different guy on stage.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was the Republican. What was his name? He used to be a former Dodger. That's his claim to fame. He has no history in politics. He's a lunatic. That was definitely like the kinds. I don't remember him saying that exact quote, but that lines up with the kinds of things he was saying. That does not really line up with the kind of things that Adam Schiff was saying. But
that's fair. I might have them mixed. Let me.
Did you watch the video? Did you get that from the video I sent you today?
Yeah.
That was the Republican guy. Yeah.
Okay.
The one that they said looked like the Gotham City mayor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's
what
still
was his name?
Unwavering support.
Steve Garvey. That's who he is. Steve Garvey.
Thank you. Yeah.
He was also just a really bad debater. Like, he was just not good at debating. It was hard to watch when he would talk.
Yeah. I got that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Folks at home, some information we forgot to tell you. If you're looking for advice, if you're right wing, this is the wrong podcast. All of us will be some level of left wing.
Or if you're a right winger, come talk with us. It'll make it a lot more fun.
Yes, come explain yourself.
Yeah. I'm gonna quickly skip over my state Senate District 78. The only person running is a Democrat named Chris Ward. There aren't even any write-ins. So anyways, congratulations, Chris Ward.
All right, Chris.
Let's go. Um, and then House of Reps, District 51, Sarah Jacobs. I mean, I looked at a couple people. I'm not. I mean, I'm not voting for the Republicans right now. Like I can't. Like they're gonna. They're trying to destroy democracy. So I can't give them any more numbers. So even if they did support like some of my policies, like which wouldn't happen. And Sarah Jacobs seems like the one who definitely gonna win. San Diego isn't as progressive as the rest of California. I like to play it safe. We need more. We need to hit the House with as many Republicans, or I'm sorry, hit the House with as many Democrats as possible. So I'm just going over. That's my reasoning for picking Sarah Jacobs. I don't know if Olivia is in House District 51.
I am indeed.
Okay.
My pick was also Sarah Jacobs, mostly just because she hasn't voted alarmingly, and I couldn't get very much info on the other candidates, and I did not bother looking up the Republicans as well.
Yeah. Noah, any other state?
Sure, I'll do my districts. I'm not following them super closely yet, but I'm in State Assembly District 76 with Assembly Member Brian Mainshine, and Senate District 40 with Senator Brian Jones. I'll talk about District 40 because that's where my strongest opinion is. We have an incumbent Republican, Brian Jones, in our Senate. I disagree with probably almost every policy position he has. For example, he's 100% pro-life, he says, and wants to build the wall. So I don't know who his opposition is. I find it very hard to believe I will not vote for his opposition. But I guess it's fathomable there could be someone even worse than him. But assuming his opposition is at the very least an average Democratic candidate, I will be voting for them. In the Assembly, we've got Brian Mainshine, who seems like a pretty average Democratic candidate. He's pushed a lot of funding for things I care about, like human trafficking and housing, and so I'd probably vote for him, but I will see who is competitive in the future.
Cool. All right, it's the big one. Now we're gonna go to president. So Olivia, why don't you go first for president?
Sure. For the primary, I would say Jill Stein is pretty far ahead of the other candidates for me personally.
Okay. Why?
Oh, okay. I mean, domestically, very sane. I mean, she's spoken out on abortion rights for years, ever since I first heard of her. She wants to reduce military spending, which I think is a huge one that this country just needs to get on. She's called out, the use of like religious freedoms, and the way this country uses the excuse of religious freedom to back like discrimination of certain groups of people. So I think that's very needed, like a very needed conversation at the highest levels of this country. I mean, I think her stance on Israel is very sane. She has called for a ceasefire. I believe she's a secular Jewish, but don't quote me on that.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
Like what? Why secular Jewish versus non-secular Jewish? Just out of curiosity.
To be honest, I feel like it's high time some secular person became president. I mean, I myself am an atheist, and I don't vibe with this system that we have where, we haven't separated church and state ever, even though we claim to, and it's just high time that we start, I think. I don't think the non-secular candidates won't be able to do so, but very closely represents my views. So Definitely Jill Stein. I think, I first became a fan of her with the whole legalized gay marriage thing. She was one of the very first people to stand up for that in her state. Yeah.
Okay, Noah. Or actually,
Uh,
I'm gonna go so that
sure.
Noah can attack us because we had a small conversation about this earlier. So I think I found all the same things Olivia found about Jill Stein. Everything that Olivia just said, that's all the things that I found about Jill Stein. And I was like, oh, all these things sound great, but also all those things were either they're just a part of her legacy, so it's like a highlight. I basically like read a highlight reel, or they're recent things in the news, right? So, yeah, she seems like just like a progressive. To me, it came off that she was just a progressive Democrat. That the environment a little wacky, okay, but I think I can handle that. I can handle a little wacky. That's what I was thinking, right? And I mean, not to say that like I don't think her overall goal is bad, right? I just think that her process to getting there can be really bad.
The way you qualified all that makes me so curious about what Noah's about to throw down.
Well, we've had our first secular president, Donald Trump. You think he's religious? Absolutely not.
Yeah, but he falls into that first camp, using religious freedom to discriminate against all of the people.
Yeah, you're right. I'm memeing. I just find it hilarious that I find it hilarious that he LARPs as some kind of Christian when he the furthest from that. But anyway.
The photo op with the Bible, that was great.
The upside down Bible, yeah.
So yeah, tell us what's up with Jill Stein that we apparently couldn't find.
Okay,
the two of us.
Well, I guess I'll first say that supporting Biden for the presidency. He's our incumbent, and incumbents statistically have an advantage of winning, and so that's a big reason why I want him running. Is I think he has the best chance of winning. He has a successful record as president, passing tons of great legislation. We can get into that if you guys want, but I understand if that's maybe not like the scope of this podcast.
You can get into like basic things, yeah.
Okay. Infrastructure bill, Inflation Reduction Act, which supported infrastructure, housing, and other kinds of funding that I really support. CHIPS Act, all those good things. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about Jill Stein and why I'm very concerned about her. I mean, her main policy is her environmental policy. Mm-hmm. That's like her biggest thing. There's not like just saying it's a little kooky. I mean, that's her main. I mean, her party's main focus is the environment, which great. I am like a huge supporter of environmental regulation and moving things towards renewable energy. But I think her plan is just beyond the pale. I mean, she says we're going to have full 100% renewable energy by 2030. That's 6 years away. She would be willing, in my opinion, to drastically damage our economy, which would hurt real life people by completely getting rid of all non-renewable energy. And I mean, she's been extremely vocal criticizing any use of nuclear energy, and by no means do I think nuclear energy should be our only source of energy, but it's an extremely valuable component of our energy infrastructure. And then another issue I have with Jill Stein, Davin mentioned about talking about NATO with other candidates in the past with me, but Jill Stein has historically been very skeptical about our involvement with NATO. Yeah, she is very anti-war. In many ways, that's a good thing. But I think it goes way too far with criticizing NATO, putting a huge amount of the blame for the current conflict in Ukraine on NATO. And I think there would be problems with our international relations. I think she's very sympathetic to Russia. RT, one of Russia's state-controlled media, fawns over her. She was at a big dinner in 2015 with them, sitting at the same table as Putin. She got a lot of criticism for that, and it's a little weird that she's not a political leader in any way, but she's got ties with Putin. Interesting. But yeah, those are some of the issues I have with Jill Stein and why I think Biden's better.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta do some more research into which candidate I'm gonna vote for because again, I've said this I think to both of you. Trying to leave NATO is a disqualifier for me. It just unless obviously if every single candidate is trying to do that, then that's one thing. But yeah, you convinced me to at least back out of that and look into a different candidate to vote for because that trying to disband NATO is a disqualifying policy position.
So I will say that,
oh, go ahead, Olivia.
Not about the NATO, but I actually did see some of the things that you were concerned about, and it also gave me pause. This is what bothers me about the Green Party being probably the most viable third party option, because they can't seem to get it right when it comes to energy, and that sucks because they're the Green Party, and a big part of that is nuclear energy. I'm not really sure why it's so demonized within the party, but the 100% renewables by 2030 didn't bother me quite as much. Honestly, I think if you're going to start negotiating, you should start from, the extreme position and find the compromise that actually ends up working. And I don't think you can do that if, you say by 2040, by 2050. I think there should be somebody pushing from the extreme end because likely that isn't going to be what we arrive at. But I do agree. You see, I like Cornel West's policies on a lot of things, but the NATO thing is concerning. And I have a lot of criticisms of NATO. And before I looked into Cornel West, I thought we had the same criticisms. But now what I'm seeing is that Jill Stein and Cornel West seem to put most of the blame for the Ukraine conflict on NATO, which is alarming.
Well, what's interesting about that is Cornel West has jumped parties a lot. Originally Green Party, running Green Party, then he originally People's Party, then switched to Green Party, then left the Green Party, now he's not non-party. But when he was running as the Green Party nominee, whenever, a few months ago or whatever, Jill Stein was his head of his campaign. So I do think they probably align a lot politically. I think Cornel West is way more anti-NATO than Stein. Cornel West has explicitly said he wants to completely remove the United States from NATO. Jill Stein hasn't gone that far, at least as far as I know. I just know she's very critical of it, and I would be concerned about her involvement in it. But if I was to compare the two, I would pick Jill Stein over Cornel West on NATO policy.
No, Cornel West didn't just say he'd remove the U.S. from NATO. According to his own website, he said disband NATO.
Okay, there you go. Even worse. Yeah.
So.
But I do think Cornel West and Jill Stein probably align a lot politically because when he was running Green Party, she was supporting him.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I think Cornel West might have a farther left domestic policy than I think I'm comfortable with. But it wouldn't be catastrophic if it was just his domestic policy. I think it's a lot of his foreign policy prescriptions that I don't know. I think that's just it's too much. It's too much of an overcorrection. I understand that sometimes we do bad things, and we should correct those bad things. But we can't also leave all our allies out to dry because somebody else will step up and do something worse.
Yeah, I think once you get to the point of America bad and so bad that I will support even its enemies to take it down, then it's you've lost the point of everything. So that is what made me rethink Cornel. I do need to look more into Jill Stein, but this doesn't scare me away towards Biden because, I get he's the incumbent. I've looked at the statistics, but these are pretty unprecedented times when we're going into an election year with a genocide raging on all our social medias and screens, so if ever there was going to be a time that the incumbent loses, it's now. The polling numbers for Biden are horrific. they're worse than they were coming into this 4 years ago. So I truly don't know how he would ever win. And I think we need to figure out who has the best chance other than Biden in this primary, or we get another Trump election.
Yeah, I think we just we have to try to at least during the primary put some heat on Biden to make him feel like he needs to change some policies. He's already started to change his policy on Israel Palestine. My understanding is Blinken has been going through the ringer trying to get Netanyahu to agree to some sort of two-state solution. And regardless of how you feel about a two-state solution, it's at least something, which no other president in our lifetime has been offering. So yeah, he's I like Blinken has publicly been saying that he is offering like unprecedented deals to Netanyahu just to get him to agree to something. So I think that we have put enough heat on Biden to at least showing that he's finally, I think, starting to arrive at something reasonable. And I think now we're at the point where now we have to like really pressure Congress because only 11 of them voted against sending more weapons to Ukraine, and I don't think the deal had any stipulations on anything, which is like super not good, right? Even if they are allies, not putting any stipulations on the shipments you give them, especially when we're putting stipulations on Ukraine when we're sending them weapons, is kind of an interesting dynamic.
And there's note really quick.
Yeah, you go for it.
Blinken's been trying to work with the PA and Ramallah since October.
Yeah, but recently he's been like publicly telling everyone the deals that he's offering Israel just to get them to stop.
Okay.
What? No, we couldn't hear you, Isaiah. Okay. Either way. Okay. Well,
Sorry, I just got it.
okay.
I think at this point, trying to negotiate as Blinken is doing with Netanyahu, when Netanyahu has explicitly said that they are not interested in a two-state solution, is concerning. I feel like this is the point where the administration needs to play hardball and, put restrictions on the arms we're sending them or on the billions of aid we're sending them. And like you said, all but 11 senators.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Biden administration, I don't think, has any control over that. Unless the votes are so close that he can veto it. But yeah, that this is a senator problem, which is one of the reasons why I support Barbara Lee right now, like so hard. Like I've never been more convinced of a vote than voting for Barbara Lee right now in these times.
Same. And going back real quick, Noah, because I didn't get a chance to jump in earlier. Katie Porter would have been my top pick, honestly, if not for this recent conflict. She was one of the senators to vote yes on censuring Rashida a couple months ago, and that was extremely concerning, especially for someone who touts being as progressive as she is. It's just strange wanting to silence the only Palestinian voice we have at that level at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think any of us agree with the censoring Rashida Tlaib.
Oh yeah, definitely not. But Katie Porter, like, that was a shock.
Yeah, very. I don't know. For me, it's I don't know. It's a very weird thing to do, especially as you have like some of these Republicans saying some things that I think probably are in poorer taste. If I remember the quote correctly, it's something that I actually genuinely didn't agree with. But just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean that you should censor someone. I don't know.
Yeah, there's been much worse things said with, actual intentions of anti-Semitism that just did not get addressed in Congress the way Rashida did. So I agree.
You mean like the space laser? Yeah. Noah, you were gonna say something. We totally cut you off.
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking about the presidential topic. Sorry, I've changed back to that. But as far as like the concern with the ongoing conflict in that region, I'm not convinced that Biden is so bad on that issue. I mean, the United States under Biden has given and provided, and rightfully so, more aid than any other country on planet Earth, humanitarian aid to Palestinians and people impacted in that region. And because of that, I mean, I think the United States has been a leader in supporting Palestinians
It hasn't.
compared to many other countries. And I think I don't think Netanyahu is ever going to agree to two-state solution. I agree with that. But I know Biden does support that, and that's why he has pushed for things and not enough. But I think the aid support has been a good thing, and more of the world should join the United States in providing more aid to Palestinians.
Real quick,
Yeah.
I just want to go two quick points for me.
Mm.
I think one, I think that Biden is I don't know how old Olivia is, but technically Bill Clinton was within our lifetime, so I would say Biden is the second best at when it comes to helping Palestinians, because Bill Clinton at least offered them something, something. It wasn't great. Arafat would have never taken it because it's a crappy deal, right? But it was a deal. It was a two-state solution deal. So I would say Bill Clinton, technically, because we're older, would be the best president in our lifetime. But Biden is the second by a very large margin. So I just want to give that concession. But I didn't until, again, after I started doing the research for who I'd vote for president, I didn't really believe Biden that he supported the two-state solution. It felt like he wanted to help Palestinians, and he didn't want too much war crimes to happen. But it felt like if it happens, it happens. And now I'm starting to actually believe him, which is good, which is a good thing. That if he did believe, I can't read his mind. If he did believe that before, right? It didn't connect with me.
Something.
Yeah, go for it. You can say anything.
I'd like to add that it's very clear, I think, at this point that Israelis will boot Bibi and to some extent Likud. So it's pretty much on the USA to elect another Democratic president who will support a two-state solution once they do that, and once this conflict, or once the current iteration of once the current iteration of war is over.
Olivia, we kind of...
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in and say that the humanitarian aid that Biden has so graciously sent over completely pales into in comparison, to all the weapons we've sent, right? And if Biden was serious, okay, he would have called out every single senator that refused to look into how Israel is using the aid we send them, right? Everything that has come out of the Biden administration feels performative. And it is great that you guys are convinced, but I'm not, and I don't dare speak for the Palestinians, but I am the closest voice to theirs that you're going to hear. And nothing the Biden administration has done seems believable, seems helpful, and he has a long way to go in proving his sincerity in helping, especially because when the conflict started, he repeated propaganda that most certainly made Israel's response worse because it gave them free rein to do what they wanted in those early days. So I don't believe Joe Biden. He so quickly repeated Israeli propaganda about beheaded babies and, just none of the help has done anything. He doesn't take a stance on the ceasefire. As recently as December, there was an emergency transfer of munitions to Israel. So what is $100 million in humanitarian aid when we've sent billions of dollars in weapons of death? You know, like, it just feels like we're playing both sides, and not even effectively.
I would.
Well,
I'm gonna fight back a little bit and be like, humanitarian aid is cheaper than weapons. So like, if you look at like the actual amount of people being helped versus the actual amount of people being equipped, I don't know the numbers, but you could argue. But like, it might be that we have sent just as much, like as far as like per person helped. We might have sent more humanitarian aid than we have weapons, because weapons are expensive and food is not.
And the 100 million number, that was just one package. That's just one little tiny portion. There's much more that's been provided than that overall. And I think it matters because who else on the world stage is doing that? The United States is alone in providing as much support as it does to Palestinians. I think that alone sets them apart from everyone else. And I think the rest of the world needs to step up and also contribute. And I think the US should continue to contribute and contribute even more to Palestinian safety, well-being, humanitarian aid. But the rest of the world needs to too. The United States is alone in this, and that's a problem.
I do think
So it most certainly is not alone. You know, tons of aid has been sent to Gaza from plenty of other countries. A lot of it has crossed through the Rafah border crossing, not nearly enough because of the way Israel controls the border. But there's been countries like airdropping aid in, and there a lot of countries are doing a lot more than the US. You know, the US, who has like watered down calls for a ceasefire. You can look at South Africa taking Israel to court at the ICJ.
Hold on, wait.
That is leading.
That doesn't help Palestinian people right now.
Hold on. Well, this is a different argument. Hold on. Stop. Noah was talking about aid, and now, Olivia, I think you're arguing something different. He was talking about, like, when he's talking about helping, he meant by via humanitarian aid. And that's just a different. But I don't think we want to go into the ICJ case, especially.
We don't have to go into the case.
Yeah.
But
especially,
to be clear, we're not the only people sending in humanitarian aid. And America's rich. We should be able to send in plenty of aid. Like, it's it's the bare minimum, especially when we are arming the soldiers killing Palestinians. Like, the least we could do is maybe send them some food and some water.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of want to get away from this because we already did, four podcasts worth of this.
Wait, can I
talk about
add one more thing?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think that whatever the USA pushes for, well, let me rephrase that. When the current iteration of fighting is over, it'll be really telling. In terms of if the USA, especially under a Democratic president, if we do or don't push Israel to unilaterally work towards a solution and work towards a two-state, well, my opinion, I think, excuse me. Sorry, drink soda water. That was a big burp. Push Israel to unilaterally work towards a two-state solution. Wow, I totally lost my train of thought. I mean, yeah, basically, I will lose a lot of respect for a Democratic president if they don't push Israel to unilaterally work towards a two-state solution and basically tell Israel to at least stop settlement growth, if not start withdrawing. Yeah, that's all. Yep. I think that'll be the most telling thing.
Yep.
Okay, can I go back to the Trump-Biden thing?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to talk about the polling claim that was made, that the polling doesn't look good for Biden. I think there are a few counter arguments to that. I mean, one, Biden, I think, just had his first campaign event within a few weeks. Trump's been campaigning for years already. Biden has been focused on getting things done, not bragging about them, which is something I like. I don't think it helps with his polling, but I think that's going to change as the campaign starts picking up. Two, polling usually follows the economy, but follows it behind. The economy for the last few months has been really strong if you follow the economic indicators that people usually tend to vote with. And you've seen the polling start to change course. Biden's polling is going up as the economy stays stable and continues to grow. And I think the polling will be very strong in favor of Biden in a few months from now.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll reconvene on the president in a few months from now.
Yep.
Again, for people at home, the reason this turned into kind of an Israel-Palestine debate again is because I think domestically we all almost support completely the same policy prescription, maybe with like a few like articulate changes. I think, if I'm understanding correctly, like we're all very progressive people in this call.
No, I have a question for you since Biden is your primary pick. How do you feel about his expansion of the border wall and his continuation of Title 42 policies implemented under Trump?
So my understanding is historically, we've had fencing at the border, which I guess you might be referring to as the border wall, and that, over time it needs to be replaced, and it's strategically placed in ways that help border enforcement. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to find me as someone who is a supporter of having like open borders or whatever the Republicans claim that Democrats support, which they don't. I believe in border enforcement. I just believe in bringing in way more immigrants than we already do. So when certain fencing needs to be replaced, I think that's fine. I'm not aware of Biden following Trump's border wall plan of constructing a border all the way continuously across the border, which is absolutely a waste of money.
I have some comments on both of those points.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, go.
Oh, and then just Biden continuing Trump policies. I mean, the biggest Trump policy that I was against was the family separation, which he hasn't continued. And I think Biden supports bringing in way more immigrants and expanding our judicial system's handling of people claiming asylum. And I think those are good things. I think he should enforce the border. Otherwise, that's my position.
Okay, so going to the border wall thing, Biden had to spend money on the border wall. It was allocated, and in that fiscal year, you have to spend money on the things that Congress allocates money for. And he chose to, instead of expanding the border wall, he repaired a piece of the border wall. So he built pieces of the border wall, but it was that was the minimum he could do to not make the border wall that much bigger. I think that's the best way to gain that system to where you're, not making a whole ton of more border wall. And then Title 42, he actually did try to reverse it at one point. So he kept it for a year during the pandemic. And I mean, I think Title 42, in my understanding, was that it paused asylum, or why can't I remember the language of this law? Olivia, do you know the language of Title 42?
The language, no, but what it effectively did was it created this backlog at the border, essentially because they changed the way in which migrants would be processed due to COVID. Essentially, it extended the times for the processing. None of it ever really stopped, but people just got stuck for much longer, and it kind of created a humanitarian crisis.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Now I'm caught up with that because there's another one with asylum seekers. But okay. So my understanding on that specific one, so I guess that's Title 42. Title 42 was he kept it during the pandemic, like the first year of the pandemic, because of like COVID concerns, which I think maybe a full year is probably too long. I agree, not great. But then he did overturn it, and Republicans sued. It got up to the Supreme Court, and until he declared that we weren't in a pandemic anymore, it had to be upheld, is my understanding. So just to give a little bit more articulation on that whole Title 42 situation. I mean, just like with the student loan situation, right? I mean, he can only do so much before the Supreme Court says, like, go fuck yourself, essentially.
I suppose I agree, but I feel like my biggest problem with his handling of Title 42 was that he basically continued the lie the Republicans used it for, like this Title 42, it was used to disrupt immigrants' process at the border, and they used COVID to do it, COVID excuse to do it. And yet there were no provisions, for COVID testing, for anything to do with COVID. And so I just feel like he had a very good way to fight it and to declare it not unconstitutional, but just illegal. Like the very basis of Title 42 was a lie. And rather than fight the Republicans on it, it feels like he just, again, like it feels like a lot of what Biden does is performative. And maybe I'm not giving him enough credit on this one, but he didn't effectively do anything. There's still people in Hukumba right now, today, stuck at essentially what are open air detention camps because we don't actually have facilities out there. But Border Patrol is telling these people that they cannot leave until they are processed, and yet the process takes weeks.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. Just to be clear, and I also understand the concern with Biden letting it, not fighting as long as he could. My point in giving that articulation was more just to understand that the reason Title 42 expired rather than getting overturned, right, was that he did try to overturn it eventually when he understood that his constituents didn't support it, and he was told, well, go fuck yourself. We're not going to overturn it until you declare COVID until you declare COVID a non-emergency, and then it just didn't happen. It expired before. Yeah, it expired before he could successfully overturn it.
Yeah, and echoing Olivia's point about not immigrants claiming asylum or not being processed quickly enough, I agree, and I do think that's something Biden wants to change. There's only so much you can do because you need Congress to support that too. But he has allocated more resources for the judicial system to more quickly process asylum claims, and I think we need to do more. But I don't think that's because of Biden. I think it's because of Congress that we haven't done more.
Well, and also, this is breaking news. This is today or yesterday. The Texas is gonna. I guess they're gonna try to protect their razor wire or something.
Oh my gosh! I hope Biden fucking sends in the military to fucking stop them.
Yeah, and they're yeah. So I think of all the criticisms we have of Biden at the border, it's clear that there is a lot of problems at the border, and and I think there's more precedent ones, unfortunately, than the backlog of migrants and asylum seekers.
Guys, I actually have to go.
Wait, I needed to hear Prop 1. No, okay.
I know. I was going to tell you my quick position on Prop 1.
Okay.
And you guys can say whatever you want, but after I leave. But I'll just give you my quick position on Prop 1 because I have to leave. But I support Prop 1. It's a bill that approves about $6 billion in bonds that will fund construction of affordable housing for people with certain psychological disabilities, and also expand our infrastructure for treating people with those disabilities. I'm a big proponent of building more housing, so that I think it's a wonderful way to spend our government resources. And yes, I fully support Prop 1, and I will be voting for it.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Sorry I have to leave. I have a guest that I have to have dinner with, but I will see you all later.
Okay. Bye. Love you. Be safe.
Bye.
I'll be done. See you guys later.
Okay. Olivia.
Okay. Well, before I continue, how solid is our understanding of Prop 1?
I don't know. It seems pretty confident. I'm not confused on the understanding at this point. I'm just not sure if it'll help or hurt people ultimately. Like if we had to like break it down into like benefit and cost, I'm not sure how plus or how minus it will be. So I'm trying to be convinced.
I agree. I wish we had slightly longer to talk to Noah about this because he seems like he's looked into it for a lot longer than we have. I'm inclined to also agree on voting yes on Prop 1. I do have my reservations. Part of that is that we want to finance, I forget if it was the healthcare section or the housing section, but with a bond. You know, it's not the worst, but I also think bonds are, you know, the priciest way to pay for things. And if that could be avoided, then it should be. And I feel like it very well could be if we were to increase taxes. I know that's one of like the big pros for this bill is that it's not actually changing the tax structure at all. It's just like reworking where the funds get allocated. But you know, I don't think rich people are being taxed all that much.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we need to. I think there is a huge problem with our tax code. This isn't really related to Prop 1, but as someone who's my father, my stepfather, but I call him my father. He's wealthy, but he's not so wealthy that the tax code doesn't affect him, right? Um, and I think that like we need to focus on like these like multi-millionaires at start there and scoot up rather than starting at him, because when the tax code does change it does hurt him, and like it does hurt his businesses ultimately, and things like that. So I think focusing on these billionaires, multi-millionaires, right, just putting a minimum tax on them or something would be super helpful.
Totally. I agree. And as always, I think like, you know, the more you've got, the more you should put back into the pot. Yeah, I wish this were a question on like where to get the funds rather than, you know, assuming, because with a bond, it's just going to be distributed evenly amongst everyone, essentially, over the next 30 years, which, you know, is fine. We're all taxpayers. That's what we do anyway. But it does burden, you know, whoever is less well off a lot more proportionally. But with that being said, I feel like nothing else in the bill is very concerning. I've seen a lot of people go back and forth on the 5% that they would be moving from counties back to state for the mental health services, but I do think that for like the payoff, I think it works. You know, I think it actually might help take some of the impact, some of the like workload off of the counties and have it, what's the word? Have it more centralized amongst the state, which I think is a pretty big issue in our mental health services at the moment. Yeah. Anyone want to jump in?
I think my biggest concern wasn't actually the bonds. I mean, ultimately, we're gonna have to pay for it some way. And yeah, I mean, it was a concern, but it was one of those things where like I was more worried about the reallocation of resources, and I was wondering if possibly taking resources away from the mental health services to reallocate for housing, if that could cause any issues. But it doesn't seem like you or Noah feel like that's going to be a huge concern. So, I mean, I was just trying to figure out in my brain how to weigh those pluses and minuses.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the two are so intricately tied that I really don't think that overall it would affect the type of services we offer, just which entity is offering it and at what point. And I just, you know, as long as that 5% that is taken away from the counties also corresponds to, you know, 5 or more % less workload on them, because there won't be so many crises, you know, because people are housed, people are being taken care of, then I think it would even out. I think overall it would be a big help. especially with turning motels into housing units. That's something that I've been waiting for California to jump on for a long time. So yeah, my urge is to vote yes. I think the only thing that I really want to be doing more is looking at how local county agencies are speaking about the bill and speaking about the reallocation and how it'll affect their services. I think that'll will ultimately lead my decision.
Okay, cool. You two have convinced me. Yeah. Just as a side note, it's interesting to watch you guys like go at it sometimes because it's mostly about foreign policy stuff. Your domestic policy is like pretty the same, which is just
Well, I mean, my opinion is always just based in human rights, and like the thing is, a candidate can offer utopia on a platter, but like if it's built on genocide or just like shitty foreign policy and the destruction of others, I don't want it. I don't want that utopia for myself.
No. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I think that just to play off of that, like, yeah, I there's a lot. I think I'm somewhere in between you guys on domestic and foreign policy, like weighing domestic and foreign policy, because like there are some concerns here at home where if you can't get somebody elected, like Republicans could really do something that are going to get a lot of people killed. And yeah, I think that's always a concern that like not just not even just here, like they could get someone killed in other countries too, which is like yeah. So there's always that weight of how much am I willing to compromise to just make sure that the literal worst thing doesn't happen.
That's fair. I just think that while we're so focused on the enemy or on preventing the enemy from doing the literal worst thing, we should just pay attention to what our so-called allies are doing as well.
Yeah.
Because we're getting pretty close to the worst thing anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you saw how we just did it. Like I'm going hard. Like I'm not. It's not like I'm super happy with the yeah. But I meant to make this point earlier. One thing I don't understand about the Green Party is why they don't go for like city council positions and mayorships and state assembly members and things like that, because a lot of energy decisions are made at the local level. I don't know why the only time I've ever seen a Green Party candidate is on the presidency. Like it's the literal worst position for the Green Party because it's the literal position that can do the least for their platform.
You see, I agree with you. I don't get it. And all it does is lend credit to the theory that the Green Party just runs to siphon away votes. Because yeah, why not get involved in local politics? I think it's insane. You're right. Like nothing is decided energy-wise at the federal level at this point. But none of our primary parties, none of our main parties have sane platforms anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's just absolutely insane. The Republican Party is still even allowed to, pretend to be a party. At this point, they're just trying to destroy America.
I mean, the problem is that there's people to vote for them, right? Like, I mean, we're not going to talk about like voting works. Like, that's actually a podcast that I want to do eventually. But like, the problem is like people vote for them. Like, they have the numbers to win in places, which is unfortunate.
Like, well, do they have the numbers or do they have the votes? Because
well, the numbers.
40 million people in California and 40 million people in 26 other states combined, and they don't get the same Senate votes. Get the same electoral college votes.
I think that the Senate is a better check than the electoral college. I do think there needs to be some check on population, so it's not just the tyranny of the majority. I think that's like that can be kind of a problem with a country that's this big and this diverse. So I do think there needs to be one check, and I think the Senate is a better check than the electoral college, because it just prevents people from like. I think the president is a representative that represents everyone in the nation. So every single person in the nation should get an equal vote on equal say on who becomes the president, right? And so I think that's a better way to like remove the check. If you understand what I'm saying, remove one of the extra checks. Yeah.
Lift the cap on the House of Reps, keep the Senate, get rid of the Electoral College, and I feel like we could really make something work. But yeah, we can get into that on the actual voting system.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? But yeah, let's talk about primaries in general and how, or state, at least state elections. I don't want to talk about national elections because that's like a whole thing. One of the ways that I think I wish more states would do this. I think they did it in Maine, and that's why Maine has one of the first independent senators. I think one of their senators is an independent, if I remember correctly, or at least was at one point.
Let me find out.
Okay. And they do ranked choice voting, which I think is awesome. But I also wish that there would be like a state mandated jungle primary, and then just whoever the top two candidates are, those are the people that get to be in the general, and then you just vote for between the two top candidates after the ranked choice jungle primary. I mean, that's the way I think we should run elections. But
wait, can you explain that again? So a jungle primary being like anyone and everyone that wants to, throw their hat in the ring, and then a second primary for the people that come out on top, or
no, not a second primary. You do a jungle primary, and then the general is just the top two people in the primary. So anybody can vote for anybody. It's ranked choice, so it's probably going to end up being like, probably whoever ends up representing the normal people the most, right? Which for people like us, might be to the right of us, unfortunately. But we're like whatever liberal insult you want to give us. But yeah.
I agree. I basically, that's the type of system I wish that we would look towards, because I feel like the first past the post system we have encourages extremists. Whereas you're right, like if you could just rank your choices, then eventually the person that is the most, I don't want to say moderate here, but just the most palatable to the most people, will end up rising to the top. I'm still looking into the differences between like ranked choice voting and star voting, because I hear a lot of criticisms of ranked choice voting that I don't quite understand. But I think,
what's star voting?
let me pull up the definition. But before we do that, I do want to say that, like, I think registering which party that you want to like vote in the primary of is an insane strategy, and I think that's like the first thing that should go. Like, I don't think the state has any reason to know like which party affiliation you're going to have for the year, especially because the parties represent the average opinion less and less. Well, obviously California's not part of this.
California essentially does a jungle primary, and just Republicans for some reason, because they hate winning in California ever, don't let normal people vote in their primary. They will literally probably never win California ever again. Knock on wood. Because they just only want crazy people to be their candidate in the general election.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so the difference between star and ranked choice voting is it's just like a slight modification to the vote where you just score the candidate and you're not forced to rank them. So like if two people are equally your second choice, you can just mark them both down for second. And so just the one that essentially has the best rank at the end wins. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think it increases ambiguity in like who can win.
I don't know. That feels like it's really like the problem is like there are probably better way. There's probably a best way to vote, but you got to remember that like we got to do this for every single person who votes in the country, and is that like a really like tenable way to count votes? I don't know.
don't know. I feel like, yeah, see, this is why a discussion at the higher levels of these alternate voting systems would be nice. But at this point, you barely find any candidates that that want to encourage ranked choice voting, a star voting, whatever alternate system there can be.
Yeah. I mean, for state...
just as a quick... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for state elections, like, you can put that on the ballot. Like, if we got a prop on the ballot, like, we could put that on the ballot. But we got to convince all the other yahoos in California to agree to it.
Yeah, it just never seems to gain any momentum.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about caucuses?
Oh,
just because it's...
I'm sorry. Is this 16? Is it the year 1600? Are we still burning witches? Is that what they do caucuses for? Like, what do you mean? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get them, to be honest with you. They make no sense. So if you like if you show up that day, you get a say, and if not, sorry.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. That's basically what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that should be the first thing to go. Let me amend my previous answer. We can keep parties if we get rid of the caucuses first. And then, have some sort of jungle primary. No more like registering I'm a Democrat, so I'm only going to vote in the Democrat primary. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's how states do it. Like, unfortunately, we're actually very fortunate in California that California literally does have a jungle primary, and Republicans just choose not to participate because they hate winning. I'm going to repeat that 100 times. It's because they hate winning.
I mean, I feel like we're all perfectly fine with that. I urge them to not change their strategy.
Yeah, keep doing it.
Oh, yeah. One day it'll work.
One day it'll work. One day they'll elect a crazy person to the California Senate.
You gotta give them hope. That's what...
Yeah. It's almost like you should change your policies when your constituents don't like them. I don't know. I think it's one thing to talk about like a general election and how that should be held, but I think primaries, like, really, it should be about narrowing it down to two candidates so that there is one clear majority. Because I don't like the idea that not a majority of people could vote for somebody and they could win an office. Do you understand anything by that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at least whittling it down to like two, and then, okay, there's only two, so there has to be a majority unless, literally there's an even number of votes. But... Yeah. Anything else you want to...
Maybe we can address this change, how we would change the voting system when we talk about if voting works.
Yeah.
Because I am interested in a new system. I feel like the only ones that ever gain traction are the ones that still won't work. I don't quite understand it, but I've seen a lot of criticism that like star or ranked choice voting would lead to like another two-party system because you would have to prioritize what's the word? Like winnability, whatever the fuck that means. But I don't know.
I think it would. I think that might be a good criticism in a more homogenized country. I think that ultimately it'll offer different candidates for different states, which is good. I think different constituents have different needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then even like in California, like we're the world's fifth largest economy. We have a very varied state. Like people in the Central Valley are going to have very different needs from people in LA or people here or people in San Francisco or people in El Centro where they're in the middle of the fucking desert, right? Right, so their middle of the road is going to be different than our middle of the road, right? Because we're for example, San Diego, we probably really, if it wasn't for Republicans being insane, we'd probably go back and forth a lot more. Because we're a more fiscally conservative town. It's just that, we like giving people rights, we like human rights and civil rights. So
We just got to get half the country to agree with us.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was my big criticism of the new like I remember my first presidential race, Gary Johnson was running, and that was when I was like, oh, these libertarians could like be something one day if they like ran in the right states and because they were essentially just fiscally conservative and socially super liberal. Like, okay, like some Americans are gonna get behind this. This is probably like a better second party, than Republicans are, and then they just decided to just be insane after Trump was elected. They were just like, what if we believed in every conspiracy theory there ever was? And I was like, great, cool. So happy I'm here. On Earth.
Well, not anymore, I feel like that's when I take my leave. Yeah, libertarians always sound like the viable option, and then you like take a closer look, and they've just got insane positions. And you're right, it's just conspiracies that always seem to work on them.
Oh, no. In 2016, they had like a real platform that was like the joke about their platform that they made. They made the joke is that like I want two two gay dudes to be able to get married on their weed farm and defend it with AK or AR-15s with no taxes. Like that was the joke they kept saying over and over again, and they just have fallen so far. They're just conservative now, right?
Damn. Conservatives that don't want to be associated with the Republican label maybe just kind of poisoned the well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like maybe there was something there, and then it just got taken over.
Well, I think that a lot of Americans would be open to the Libertarian Party if they weren't so they take their position too far. I think, like the lack of government regulation. I think there's like in the same way that Noah was criticizing Jill Stein for trying to basically for saying that like if she got her way, it would cause like a lot of problems in America. Like, yeah, of course. In the same way that like if libertarians really like deregulated everything about the government, like we would have an overwhelming amount of issues. Like
nothing would work anymore.
Yeah. Like bureaucracy is a pain in the ass, but it's there for a reason. Like it's like because we work together, right? Like sometimes like filling extra forms out is a pain in the ass. Okay, but like if you don't do it, eventually we're gonna lose something, and that's gonna be a huge problem.
Yeah, like the alternative is worse. Bureaucracy, as annoying as it was, is the solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about since you're here?
No. I'm just hoping that we just get a strong contender to Trump during these next couple, months of primary, because I think we really need it.
Yeah.
And also, it would be great to get a third party past that 5% mark needed for actual election funds.
Yeah. Well, they did last time around. Joe Jorgensen did get past her 5%, and they didn't let her on the stage, which I think is really fucked up. Like as much as I wouldn't have voted for Joe Jorgensen, I shilled for her online for like a while, saying that she should be allowed to be at the debate because that's what you said,
Exactly. Yeah. Like, even if no one was actually going to vote for her beyond that point, like, she did it. She passed the mark, So I don't know what happened there. I honestly don't.
Yeah. I think we need to take third-party candidates more seriously, but I also think that both libertarians and the Green Party are guilty of never running for any local elections, and that's why no one knows who any of them are, and just no one votes for them.
Yeah, they're definitely guilty of getting in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like places in like New Mexico or Texas where libertarians could win running on a traditional libertarian platform, and there's definitely places in California, where gas prices or energy prices are super high that a lot of the Green Party people could win, and instead of doing that, they just run for president every 4 years and continue to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we continue to not have any other parties because the only two other viable options are just have no strategy, have no understanding of how political strategy works. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving your opinion. And as always, it's always a pleasure. So.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I will see you on Monday. Okay. All right. Goodbye.
Okay.
Bye. Be safe.
Bye. Is there...
Recording over?
Yes.
Yeah.